Hi, everybody. This is Mitch Tanenbaum. Thank you for joining me today. This is the security news update for July 17th, 2022. We are seeing some interesting stuff with regard to malware getting through encrypted. And depending on the encryption algorithm, you may or may not be able to stop that at the firewall. If the people are working from home or some other place, you definitely, firewall is not part of the equation, which means that you're counting on endpoint protection to go off and stop whatever bad stuff might be in that encrypted traffic stream. Sometimes encrypted traffic is HTTPS, and you can do your own orchestrated man-in-the-middle attack. It takes some work, but sometimes it's not HTTPS, and the encryption keys are not easily exploitable like they are in HTTPS. So the real question here is, are you doing what you need to do to protect yourself? And then the question becomes, what to do with the stuff that's decrypted. Are you disposing of it immediately? Are you keeping it? If you keep it, then you run the risk of all kinds of things. You could be getting protected health information, you get financial, no telling. And if you keep it in its encrypted state, then that doesn't do you any good, because how do you decrypt it later? So it's just an interesting challenge you have, I think, nowadays as we deal with this. Also, for those of you who are still running Windows 8.1 on some of your machines, Microsoft has now resorted to a full screen, the world is ending, end of life message that pops up when you log in. Now, the challenge here is going to be that if you're running automated systems and they reboot, you're going to get that screen and you have to acknowledge it. So those systems are not going to function until you acknowledge it. And so be aware of that. End of life is January of next year. You probably will be able to buy extended support for a fee. Not sure, haven't seen any details on that, but that wouldn't surprise me. But without that, you're running without support. And for those of you who are in a compliance regime, that likely breaks the compliance regime. Moving on to the interesting challenges with software. This is a little different than what I sometimes put in the software section, but Honda is trying to downplay a hacker remote unlock and start bug. Apparently, Honda was aware of this. They are working on a fix, and in fact, they've just announced later in the week after I wrote this, a new key fob communication system for some 2022 and 2023 models that they claim is not vulnerable. But this white hat hacker demonstrated, he went to a Honda dealership and he demonstrated cars as old as 2012. Now, that does not mean that cars older than 2012 are not also vulnerable, but he was able to demonstrate. My guess is the dealership didn't have any cars older than that. As new as 2022 and as old as 2012, he's able to demonstrate that he was able to unlock and start the car. Now, obviously, if they can unlock the car, they can steal anything that's in there, right? So that's number one. Honda claims that this particular bug does not allow the hacker to drive the car away, which is certainly no comfort if they stole your stuff. But this is an ongoing problem with car makers as they battle the hackers. And that's great that they're fixing some 2022 and 2023 cars, but that doesn't help anybody that's got a car that's vulnerable. And this is the challenge. This is convenience versus security. And if you have a car that has remote unlock or a key fob, as opposed to a key. Now, keys are vulnerable too. So nothing's perfect, but you just ought to be aware of what's going on. In the important patches department, Google has released a patch for Chrome, version 103. This is for an actively exploited bug in WebRTC. So this is the fourth actively exploited bug in 7 months now, 6.5 months. So I would advise certainly people to go off and patch this quickly. And this is probably not the end of it. Remember, this affects every Chromium-based browsers. So that would be Brave and Opera and Vivaldi and all the Chromium-based browsers. On the legal front, Joshua Schulte, who is the ex-CIA programmer who is charged with leaking all kinds of data to WikiLeaks, he had a retrial. He was convicted on some of the charges last time, and but the jury deadlocked on a bunch of other charges this time. Now that the government had a retry, they know probably what worked and what didn't work, and then he decided to be his own defense lawyer, which is kind of stupid. And he was convicted on all charges this time, so he is going to be going away for a long time. He's also been charged on child porn possession, so that's not good either. But he's going to be in jail for quite a while. Next in the legal department, the FCC is finally looking at raising the definition of broadband. Until 2015, the definition was, well, if you could give me 1 megabit of bandwidth down, that was broadband. And then in 2015, they said, that's really a problem. Let's increase that from 1 to 25, which is a 2,500% increase, is a lot of increase. I remember my ISP at the time was forced to upgrade the speed of my connection from 20 megabits to 25 megabits. Otherwise, they couldn't say that they were selling broadband anymore, which obviously from the perspective of carriers not being a broadband carrier but not selling broadband is a problem. So now the FCC is talking about, and they're just talking about it at this point. I have no clue how long it's going to take to get there. Raising the definition of broadband from 25 megabits down to 100 megabits down. That means for my carrier, that means they're going to have to increase the speed by 400%. And I don't know that they can charge a lot more for that. I mean, they might be able to charge a little bit more, but they're in a position where they're going to say, you're not selling broadband. You're selling internet, but you're not selling broadband. And people are not going to be really happy about getting unbroadband internet. So we shall see what they do. They're also talking about that their goal is to raise it to 1,000 megabits. That's going to be a real problem. And the problem is not getting 1,000 megabits to your house. The problem is what happens when you aggregate it. If you have 20 houses in your neighborhood and 20 neighborhoods in your village and 20 villages in your city, and as you go up that food chain, the amount of bandwidth that you need is increasingly harder and harder to sustain. So even 100 megabits is going to be hard for some parts of the country where they just don't have enough backhaul bandwidth. So we shall see. In the breaches department this week, an unknown hacker stole information on 1 billion Chinese citizens. They're selling the data for 10 Bitcoin. It's 23 terabytes of data. And they think it was stolen from the Shanghai National Police, which is one more insufficiently protected government database. The Chinese government is I would say freaking unhappy right now. This database was apparently hosted at Alibaba, and the Chinese government has told Alibaba to come in and explain themselves. Now I'm sure they're going to say, just like Amazon and Microsoft say, we're not responsible for what our customers do, except that in China that's probably not good enough. In China they say, we don't care, fix the problem. So we shall see what happens there, but I think Alibaba is going to be forced to do some stuff, including snooping on their customers, which of course from the Chinese perspective that's not a bad thing to do. So we shall see, but it's clearly embarrassing to the Chinese government to lose information on 1 billion citizens. And that includes their criminal records, their national ID numbers, their phone numbers, all kinds of information. Think about anything that the police might have. Next, and this falls into the vendor cyber risk management department, an outsourced accounts receivable vendor, which is used by hundreds and hundreds of medical providers, was hacked. The hack was discovered in February. They notified their customers, which are the medical practices, in May. So that's like March, April, 60 days. But they didn't notify the users whose data was hacked until July. I think this probably violates the HIPAA rules. I'm sure they're going to go off and say, well, gee, we didn't know that we were hacked, or whatever their excuse is going to be for. And you know what happens, you know, when the law turns to 72 hours, not 72 days or more. They have a link to an undated and very vague customer disclosure that's not even on their website; it's on a cloud server. So it's interesting, but I think they're going to be in trouble, and I'm sure they will get sued, whether they're in trouble or not. I think they'll definitely get sued for this, and so it kind of points to as the rules become stricter and stricter, you need to make sure that you're in a position to be able to do this kind of reporting on a much speedier basis than you've ever had to do. You do not going to have months and months from a legal standpoint. And like I say, even if the regulators don't find you because you're not in a regulated industry or something like that, you're still going to wind up on the wrong end of lawsuits. Next, couple of things. Reverse search warrants. We have a case going on in Colorado right now that's going to be very interesting. We'll see whether it creates a precedent for reverse search warrants. That's the kind of search warrant where Google says, give me the names of everybody who, I'm sorry, a law enforcement agency asks Google to say, give me the names of everybody who searched for 123 Main Street, or every phone, Mr. Apple, please give us the phone numbers of every phone that was in this particular square in this particular time frame. So the challenge becomes with the Fourth Amendment. There's a requirement for particularity, and obviously the framers of the Constitution in the 1700s didn't understand that there was going to be cell phones, and didn't understand what particularity meant in that context. So ultimately, this is going to be up to the Supremes to decide. And they seem to be strict constitutionalists. Not clear how they're going to come down on this particular thing, but it'll be interesting to see. Next, license plate readers. They've been a privacy challenge for a while, right? There's no laws that really talk about what private individuals can do with license plate data that they collect, and there's no restriction on them collecting license plate data. But right now, there's at least one company that says they collect billions of license plates a month. They can sell it to whoever they want, and the concern is post-Roe that they might sell it to people who want to harass, or even worse, people who are involved in an abortion one way or another. And it could be as simple as giving somebody on a ride to an abortion clinic, not necessarily a person getting an abortion or providing an abortion. So, and those guys, potentially, their lives can be threatened. So it's been interesting to see what happens there. I know there are a couple of states who are considering some legislation in terms of cracking down on what people can do with license plate readers, but right now it's pretty much the Wild West. Next, we're seeing some challenges with check fraud. I got a letter the other day from a premier accounting firm in New York City, said that they're seeing a lot more check fraud among their customers. They're saying it's even if they do your books, they can't guarantee that they'll catch all of this, which is scary. They had one suggestion on one thing you can do. I have a couple more suggestions on things you can do, but definitely the status quo, as it has been for a couple hundred years, of writing paper checks, not worrying about it, is probably not a good strategy if you care about your money. And finally, on the area of news bites, several Experian users have said that their account has been hacked. One even said that they had this ridiculously long password on the account. Experian does not offer multi-factor authentication, not an option. So we'll see whether Experian gets in trouble. I posted this article on Friday, and I got some responses from people who said their Experian account had been hacked as well. So I'm guessing it's not an isolated incident, and this may be a big problem for Experian. The simple solution, obviously, would be for them to implement two-factor authentication. Why they haven't done that, I don't know, whether it's technical, political, whatever, but they haven't done it. So Hunter Biden is back in the news. Apparently, his iCloud account was hacked. As everybody probably knows by now, your iCloud account, your backups are only as good as the password that you pick. Most people pick a password of, password 123. I have no reason to believe that Hunter Biden has serious security folks advising him. And so he probably has a crappy password. Someone guessed it. And then at that point, now there are tools that allow you to root through within it. And this applies to everybody. So, do whatever you do. My suggestion is, if you're really concerned, don't back it up into the iCloud. And if you have to back it up into the iCloud, make sure you pick a super secure password, a unique password that's not used anyplace else, and a multi-factor authentication. That would be my suggestion. I reported either earlier this year or late last year about a whole bunch of PC firmware vulnerabilities, UEFI. That's the thing that replaces the BIOS. Now we're seeing more computer models that have been compromised. This time it's Lenovo. Now, my opinion is Lenovo is on the do not buy list just because of its close relationship with the Chinese government. There's plenty of other computers out there. And so I personally wouldn't recommend buying Lenovo, but if you do have one and it's one of these 70 models, then you need to upgrade the firmware. This is not the kind of upgrade I don't think that you're going to see Microsoft participating in. So I think you're going to have to do this all by yourself. In the follow after effects of the 2020 election, there were a number of Colorado election officials that have been arrested and faced felony charges. Another one was arrested this week. One who was already arrested had a court hearing on whether her bail should be revoked because she traveled out of state in violation of her bail conditions. Turns out the judge decided that she was a good person and he didn't revoke her bond. But we shall see what happens there. But we now have a number of people who are under indictment and charges for felonies for doing things that at least the district attorney thinks are illegal. And in the world of self-driving cars, we're seeing some interesting challenges. Cruise, which is Chevy's, they use Chevy's to go off and do their self-driving thing. And I think they're owned by Chevy, I'm not sure. They're having problems with their cars losing communications with the server that controls them. And when they do that, they just kind of stop immediately wherever they are. And apparently they're causing traffic jams in San Francisco where they're kind of testing, that San Francisco is kind of the guinea pig ground zero for this stuff. There are reports that, some of these cars have completely lost control or lost communications with their servers for as long as, 45 minutes. And they just stop right in the middle, of the road because, they can't safely drive. So that's kind of interesting. So that's all we have today. If you are concerned about your ability to monitor your network traffic, if you don't think it is what it should be, then please reach out to us. We'd be happy to talk to you about it. Until next time, thanks for listening.
Turnkey Cybersecurity and Privacy Solutions offers the complete cybersecurity program for small to medium-sized businesses. They include everything needed to secure your business and meet compliance requirements. Visit our website at turnkeycybersecurityandprivacysolutions.com to learn more.